Elevator doors were closing when I heard her voice. "Wait, Serena?" I stuck my hand out just in time. The doors shuddered back open, and my coworker Phoebe squeezed in, pulling her tote bag after her. It was past 8. Most of the building had emptied out hours ago. I'd stayed late finishing a quarterly report that wasn't even due until Friday, mostly because going home to an empty apartment felt worse than fluorescent lights and cold coffee. "You look terrible," Phoebe said. She meant it kindly. That's the thing about her, she always says the blunt thing, but her voice never has any edge to it. "Thanks." Thanks. I pressed the lobby button again even though it was already lit. "Long day, long week, long 4 years," I said, and I laughed a little because what else do you do? She looked at me sideways. "Have you heard from him?" "The usual. 3-minute call on Sunday, bad connection. He said the project site moved further out, somewhere closer to the coast." I stopped asking exactly where. Phoebe was quiet for a second. The elevator hummed. "Serena?" she said slowly. "What coast?" "The Gulf Coast. He's in Louisiana. The offshore contract." I looked at her. Something in her face had gone still in a way I didn't understand yet. "What?" "I saw him," she said. The elevator opened. Neither of us moved. "What do you mean you saw him? 2 months ago." "At the Trader Joe's on Westheimer. I was with my sister. I almost said hi, but you guys had just gotten married, and I thought maybe I was wrong, maybe it wasn't him." "But it was, Serena." "He was with a woman?" "They were buying groceries, normal groceries, like a family." I remember the lobby ceiling. I don't know why I remember that. The little water stain above the security desk, shaped like a boot. I stared at it for a long time. "He's been in Louisiana," I said, "on the rig." "Westheimer is in Houston," she said. "My husband's name is Joel. We met when I was 26 at a birthday party for a mutual friend. He was the kind of person who made you feel like you were the only one in the room, not in a performative way, not like he was working at it, just genuinely attentive. He remembered things. He asked follow-up questions. He showed up. We dated for 14 months and got married in October. Small ceremony, my parents' backyard. Fairy lights in the oak tree. I wore my grandmother's earrings. My dad cried. Joel's vows were handwritten, and he had memorized them, every word, and when he looked at me, it did not feel like a performance. None of it felt like a performance. 6 weeks after the wedding, he got the call. He'd applied for an offshore engineering contract with an energy company before we met. One of those long-shot applications you send in and forget about. The contract was for 3 years, renewable, and the site was a deep-water platform off the Louisiana coast. The pay was almost triple what he made onshore. We talked about it for 2 days straight. We made lists. We calculated what 3 years of that income could mean. The down payment on a house, the student loans gone, a real start. 3 years, he said, and then we plant roots. Real roots. I promise. I said yes. Of course, I said yes. I trusted him. The first year was hard the way everyone told me it would be. 2 weeks on the rig, 2 weeks off. That was the rotation. When he was off, he was home, and we packed those 2 weeks full. Farmers markets, drives out to the hill country, cooking elaborate dinners we'd find in cookbooks we'd bought at estate sales. I decorated our apartment. I learned how to make his mother's lemon pound cake. I called him on the satellite phone when I missed him, which was often, and he always answered. The second year was quieter. The calls got shorter. He said the satellite connection had gotten worse since they moved the platform further out. He said he was tired a lot. I told myself that was normal, that offshore work was brutal, that 2 weeks on a metal platform with no horizon but water would exhaust anyone. The third year, the contract was renewed. He called to tell me the morning I was standing in our kitchen making coffee. The news hit me somewhere behind the sternum. 1 more year, he said. The money, Serena, we're almost there. I believed him. I adjusted. I took on extra projects at work. I started running in the mornings just to have somewhere to put the restlessness. I told my friends he was coming home in a year. I told my mother. I told myself every single night 1 more year. Then 1 more year became another renewal. Then another. 4 years. 4 years since the wedding, and my husband had been home for a total of maybe 6 months of it. scattered across 2-week visits, and even those visits had started to feel strange in ways I couldn't name. Like he was slightly out of sync with me, like there was a lag in the conversation, like we were two people who had been close once and were working to remember how. I told myself that was normal too. I drove home from the parking garage on autopilot. I don't remember any of the intersections. When I got inside, I sat at the kitchen table for probably an hour without turning on any lights. I had my phone in my hand. I could call him. I had the satellite number, the one that rang 6 times before it connected. I could just ask, but I already knew, somewhere below the rational part of my mind, that if I called, he would have an explanation. He always had an explanation, and I would want to believe it because I had built 4 years of my life on believing it, and taking that apart in a single phone call felt like something I wasn't ready to do in the dark. Instead, I opened my laptop. His name? Image search. I'd done this before, the usual social media check, nothing unusual. But this time I went further. I searched his name alongside the name of the company he worked for. A few results came up. I clicked through them. Nothing alarming. Then I searched the company's public employee portal, and there, under project assignments, was a listing that had been updated 4 months ago. His name. His certification number. And under current assignment, onshore operations, Houston facility. Onshore. Houston. I put my phone face down on the table. I picked it up again. I read it again. The words didn't change. I have a cousin named Tatum who works in HR at a logistics firm and has, in her words, zero patience for men who think women aren't paying attention. I called her at 10:30 that night. She didn't sound sleepy when she picked up. I told her what Phoebe had told me. I told her what I'd found on the company portal. She was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. "You need to know when the assignment changed," she said. "How long has he been onshore? I don't know how to find that." "I do," she said. "Give me 2 days." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the bed we picked out together at a furniture store in Austin, on my side of it, with his side untouched next to me the way it had been, almost every night for 4 years, and I thought about all the small things I had explained away, the background sounds on calls that didn't sound like a platform, the times he hadn't come home during his 2 weeks off because of equipment delays. The way he'd stopped talking about our future house, our future plans, the routes he had promised. I thought about the woman in Trader Joe's. I thought about what buying groceries together looks like. Not a coworker, not a friend, not ambiguous. I thought about what Phoebe's face had looked like when the elevator doors opened. I already knew. But knowing and having proof are 2 different things, and I needed the proof before I did anything, because I knew myself well enough to understand that, without it I would doubt, I would spiral. I would let him talk me back into believing, and I couldn't afford to do that again. Tatum called me back in 36 hours, not 2 days. He was transferred to the onshore facility 14 months ago, she said. I have a contact there who confirmed it. He has been working a standard 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, for over a year. 14 months. For 14 months, my husband had been living in the same city where we met, working a desk job, and calling me on Sunday mornings to describe a platform that he hadn't set foot on in over a year. "There's more," Tatum said. Her voice had gone careful. My contact recognized his name. Apparently, he's known around the office. He's been with someone. A woman named. My contact thinks her name is Dana. They've been seen together at company events. Company events. Official functions. Not hiding. Does she know about me? I said. My contact didn't know, Tatum said. I'm sorry. I genuinely don't know what she knows. I took a personal day the next day and drove to the address Tatum had given me for the Houston facility. I didn't go inside. I parked across the street and sat in my car with a coffee I didn't drink, and at 12:15, people started coming out for lunch. Joel came out at 12:22. He was wearing a blue button-down I didn't recognize. He looked rested. He looked the way he used to look when we first started dating, relaxed, unhurried, like someone who was right where he was supposed to be. He was with a woman. She was probably my age, maybe a little younger. They were talking about something, and she laughed at whatever he said, and he put his hand on the small of her back as they walked to her car. I sat there for a long time after they drove away. I thought I would feel more in that moment, some kind of explosion or collapse. Instead, I felt very quiet, very clear. Like something that had been blurry for a long time had finally resolved into focus. And now I just had to decide what to do with the picture. I called my mother that night. I told her everything. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" or "Maybe there's an explanation." She said, "What do you need and who do I call?" I love my mother. I needed a lawyer first. A friend from my running group had gone through a divorce 2 years earlier and gave me the name of her attorney, a woman named Carolyn who had an office in Midtown and a reputation for being methodical and unshakable. I called the next morning. She had a cancellation and could see me Thursday. In Carolyn's office, sitting across from her with a yellow legal pad and my documentation spread on the conference table, I felt for the first time like I had solid ground under my feet. She went through everything I had the company portal printout, Tatum's notes, the dates, the timeline. "The misrepresentation about his location is relevant," she said, making notes. "Particularly if marital funds were used to maintain a separate household. Do you have access to your joint accounts?" I did. We'd kept a joint account when he left. It made sense logistically, he said, for me to manage the household bills while he was offshore. His paychecks deposited directly. I paid rent, utilities, groceries, my car insurance. I handled everything. I thought I was being the supportive, practical partner. Carolyn and I went through the account together. The math told a very specific story. His income was substantial, nearly $18,000 a month. My living expenses accounted for maybe $3,000 of that. The rest had been moving, steadily, for 14 months, into a separate account I had never seen. "That's a significant sum," Carolyn said. She underlined something on her pad. "We'll need documentation of where it went, but this establishes financial deception, which strengthens your position considerably." I nodded. I was writing the number down and my hand was very steady, which surprised me. Carolyn advised me not to confront him directly until we had filed. I listened to her. It was one of the harder things I have ever done, continuing those Sunday calls for 3 more weeks while the paperwork moved through the system. He sounded the same as always. He asked how work was going. He said the Gulf weather had been rough. I said the weather in Austin had been fine. I kept my voice even. I kept my answers short. I looked at the water stain in the lobby ceiling of my office building when I needed to anchor myself. The papers were served on a Tuesday morning while he was at work. He called me 40 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message that was 4 minutes long, confused, then defensive, then something that sounded almost like relief, which was the part that stayed with me the longest. Like some part of him had been waiting. His lawyer contacted Carolyn the next day. We went into mediation. This is the part people always want to know about Dana. I did find out, eventually, what she knew. Her name was Dana Whitfield, and she was a project coordinator at the same company. She had met Joel 8 months into his onshore transfer. She thought he was single. He had told her he'd never been married. She found out about me at the same time he was served, because apparently he called her right afterward and she heard it in his voice and asked directly. She texted me. I don't know how she found my number. Mutual contacts, maybe? Or she was more resourceful than I expected. The text said, "I didn't know. I'm sorry. If there's anything you need from me for the legal process, I'll provide it." I stared at that text for a long time. I wrote back, "Thank you. I meant it. She had done nothing wrong. She was lied to too, just with different lies." The mediation took 4 sessions. Carolyn was steady and precise through all of it, and Joel's lawyer was good but working with less, because the documentation we had was thorough and the financial picture was clear. Texas is a community property state. Everything accumulated during the marriage is divided equally. That included 4 years of his offshore income, which was substantial. It included the joint savings. It included the investment accounts he had opened without mentioning them to me, which we discovered during the asset disclosure process. I walked out of the final mediation session with my portion of everything, enough to do what we had originally planned with the money. Enough for a real down payment. Enough to stop doing the math every month. I also walked out with something I hadn't anticipated, a complete absence of regret about the choice I had made on that Thursday when I called Carolyn's office. Some decisions, once made, feel immediately right in the body, not just the mind. That was one of them. Here's what I know now that I did not know 4 years ago. I know that people who love you don't require you to stop asking questions. I know that trust me said too often about too many things is not evidence of trustworthiness. It is a request to stop looking. I know that a person can be genuinely charming, genuinely warm, capable of making you feel fully seen, and still be building a separate life in a city 90 minutes away. I know that I am a person who stayed. For 4 years I stayed, and I was faithful, and I managed the household and worked my job and made his mother's lemon pound cake and slept on my side of the bed. I am not ashamed of that. I was the person I promised to be. The fact that he wasn't doesn't retroactively make my faithfulness foolish. What I am is angry sometimes when I think about the Sundays. About how many Sunday mornings I sat by the window with coffee and waited for the satellite phone to ring, rearranging my weekend around a call that came from a man sitting in an apartment in Houston who could have driven to see me in an hour and a half, about what it cost me, and time, and plans not made, and doors I didn't open, because I believed I was building towards something with someone. That anger is useful. I don't try to put it away. I just don't let it be the only thing. My apartment lease was up 3 months after the mediation ended. I didn't renew. I've been in the new place for almost 5 months now. A small house this time, not an apartment. It has a backyard with 2 live oak trees and a porch where I've started drinking my coffee in the mornings instead of by the window. My mother came to visit in March, and we painted the kitchen together and stayed up until midnight talking. I went back to running. I signed up for a half marathon in the fall. Phoebe and I still take the elevator home together when we both stay late, which is often. She asked me once if I was angry at her for telling me. I think she had been carrying that. I told her the truth, which is that I am more grateful to her than I know how to say. That what she saw that night in the parking garage, that something in her face going still, that was the moment my actual life started coming back into view. Not every discovery breaks you. Some of them set you free. I used to think that loyalty was its own protection, that if you held up your end of a promise completely, without shortcuts, without wavering, the universe would somehow hold the structure up around you. I know now that's not how it works. But I also know that the way things ended for Joel and me wasn't random. There's a logic to it, even if it took me a long time to see it clearly. Joel made a series of choices, each one required the next. He transferred onshore and didn't tell me. That required a lie. The lie required maintenance, which meant the Sunday calls, the fake bad signal, the platform that no longer existed. 14 months of that. And every choice in that chain made the next one harder to undo, until he was standing in a Houston parking lot with Dana and a life he had built entirely on the assumption that I would never look too closely. The structure he built was held together by my trust, which he had spent years making sure I wouldn't question. What brought it down wasn't anything dramatic. It was Phoebe, tired after a long day, squeezing into an elevator. It was a Tuesday afternoon at a grocery store. It was the ordinary world going about its business, indifferent to the story Joel had constructed. That's the thing about deception at scale. It requires everything to cooperate. And everything almost never does. Forever. I think about what it took for me to get through those 3 weeks after I found out. Still answering the Sunday calls, keeping my voice even. I didn't know I had that in me, but I did. Because I had spent 4 years building a kind of quiet discipline. The discipline of a person who wakes up alone and still makes the bed, who manages the bills and shows up to work and runs 6 miles on a Saturday morning because that's what you do when the person you're building toward isn't there. I had been building something, it turned out, just not what I thought. I had been building myself. Carolyn, my attorney, told me once during mediation prep that the people who hold up best in these situations are the ones who documented everything without knowing they'd need it. I kept every bank statement. I logged every call, not out of suspicion, just out of habit, out of the same steadiness that gets you through 4 years of an empty apartment. That habit protected me in ways I couldn't have planned for. Intelligence isn't just what you know. It's the discipline of paying attention, even when nothing seems wrong, keeping your eyes open even when it's easier not to. What I want to say to anyone who finds themselves in a version of what I went through is this. The anger is not a flaw. The grief is not weakness. Staying for 4 years was not stupidity. It was integrity. The difference between me and Joel is not that I was naive and he was clever. The difference is that I kept my word and he didn't. And that difference showed up in every single material way when it mattered. The court saw it. Carolyn saw it. I saw it. I'm not the same person who stood in that elevator lobby staring at a water stain on the ceiling. I'm steadier. I'm less willing to explain things away. And I'm sitting on my porch right now with coffee and 2 oak trees in a backyard that is entirely uncomplicatedly mine. That's not nothing. That's everything.